And greetings. Happy Monday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. I'm Steve Deace, joined as always by Aaron McIntyre, rejoined by Todd Erzin. After you took some time off for the fam, everything good? You guys doing well?
We are doing well. Successful surgery, one of two. Cleveland will become a friend in the next, it already is a friend, but a long friend during the next year. But it's what has to be done, and we found a great doctor there and having some fun in Cleveland. It's
an underrated place, man. Oh. And you guys got to the Christmas Story Museum,
Again, it's the second time because my wife was there this time, and we went back. Yeah.
It lives up to the hype, doesn't it?
Oh, it's
impossible to get out of there without a smile on your face.
It's the very definition of charming.
Yes, that's a good way to put it, you bet. No doubt about it. Hey, we're brought to you by our friends over at Voice of Judah Israel. We've been studying the book of Romans here now for a little more than a year on the show for Theology Thursday. And that's a verse that leads off that book is really the mission statement of the ministry of Voice of Judah Israel, where the Apostle Paul declares, I'm not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes. Well, Voice of Judah Israel is concerned that not enough people in Israel believe. All right, so there's 6.5 million Jews, 9 million total Israelis. It's one of the most secular nations on earth. They're trying to do something about that. They're trying to bring the gospel back to the country that gave it out to the rest of the world. And if you want to help them in that mission, it includes charitable works and doing good deeds, but its bedrock is catechesis, discipleship, word and sacrament, teaching and preaching the word of God. And if you want to support that mission there, maybe you could be a part of a great harvest there in the Holy Land. Learn more and also maybe support them when you go to vojisrael.org/Steve. That's VOJ for Voice of Judah. vojisrael.org/Steve. Again, that's vojisrael.org/Steve. All right, coming up on today's show, next hour, we've got some Ask Me Anything. How are this week's questions? Are we looking good? What do you think?
There's three of them that are variations on a theme that pretty much could be the entire hour, and it's not a new topic, but that's where people's minds are at. And then there's some other stuff as well.
It was our anniversary this weekend. I spoke at a conference in Texas over the weekend, so I kind of took some downtime. We traveled, did some couple stuff, and I'm just starting to get caught up here. I've dipped in and out on what's going on, but I'm just starting to get caught up here last night and then throughout the course of today. Been kind of an interesting weekend out there. It is. Well, you are seeing a collection of worldviews, and this is always what happens when you attempt a paradigm shift every single time. The worldviews that we're used to. What's the Joker's line? Okay. The plan could be terrible, okay? Yeah, but as long as they think there's a plan, all right, people are just fine.
That's perfect.
Okay? It's when it's not part of the plan. And the plan could be awful. The plan could have ripped you off for generations and everything else, but it was built in, right? It's the ancient Israelites, okay? Well, at least in Egypt, we had meat to eat. Right? Yeah. Now you've brought us out here and we don't know where we're going to go, and we're out in the middle of this wilderness. We're circling this mountain. We're in this desert. What's going on? Okay. And so you see a lot of that tension has spilled out comprehensively across political social media over the weekend. I am sure that will be a focus of what Aaron will discuss here with what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by war. But first, disambiguation of the word economy. Economy has taken on a lot of meanings and a lot of conflations, but the original meaning of the word economy comes from the Greek word oikonomia, or household management, oikos, house, or nemen, to manage. So the word economy originally meant to manage a house. And who lives in houses? Families. Just a little fun fact before we get going, because in the aftermath of President Trump's tariffs on basically every planet under the sun, markets Thursday and Friday experienced a sell-off, with U.S. markets losing 10% in 2 days, taking Wall Street back to where it was around this time last year. Last night on Air Force One, Trump said,
"Every country is calling and being very solicitous of us. Very, very nice. They're being very nice. And we have to be able to justify. This is not sustainable. The United States can't lose $1.9 trillion on trade. We can't do that, and and also spend a lot of money on NATO in order to protect European nations. We cover them with military, then we lose money on trade. The whole thing is crazy. And I got elected on that basis.
This morning, President Trump posted on Truth Social, quote, "The United States has a chance to do something that should have been done decades ago. Don't be weak. Don't be stupid. Don't be a panican. A new party based on weak and stupid people. Be strong, courageous, and patient, and greatness will be the result." Markets this morning fluctuated on news that various countries are in the process of negotiating with the U.S. Here's National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett.
Will you do a 90-day pause? Would you consider that?
Or Bill, yeah, I think that the president is going to decide what the president's going to decide. There are more than 50 countries in negotiation with the president. We've got the Prime Minister of Israel coming today. We've had a reach out overnight from Taiwan. And but I would urge everyone, especially Bill, to ease off the rhetoric a little bit.
Over the weekend, Democrats protested at AstroTurf rallies all over the country.
My name is Grace Martinez Rosas. I am an immigrant. I am undocumented, unafraid, queer, and unashamed.
Moving on, billionaire Democrat donor Antonio Gracias, now working with the Department of Government Efficiency, says the Biden administration's border policies handed human traffickers how much money to import new Democrat voters?
But you got to realize we gave $13 to $15 billion a year to human traffickers. That's what this system did. And the money magnet that attracted these people here, it wasn't like it was some crisis that, environmental crisis. The money magnet attracted these people, and many of them died on the way up.
Yeah, that's a Democrat donor now working with Doge, telling the All In podcast the Biden administration sent billions of dollars to human traffickers in order to import new Democrat voters. In Colorado, House Democrats there just passed a bill that classifies misgendering your own child as child abuse. It could cause you to lose custody if you don't affirm your child's chosen gender. Yeah, the woke just isn't going away on its own. Live action journalist Savannah Craven was assaulted on the street by a woman she was interviewing. Craven was asking the woman about her defense of baby killing when this happened.
Don't understand the magnitude of having a child. I'm not the one who admitted they would be okay with killing babies in foster care and killing children that have been abused. That's not the point. What I'm saying.
CNN's Joseph Goebbels tells a joke.
You've got 2 days of data. Everyone, especially on your side, on the left, is freaking out.
I'm not on the left.
I'm not on the left. But at the end of the day, listen, this whole concept. All right, Jake, thank you.
And finally, a Marxist Madness update. This was supposed to happen on Thursday, but I forgot. Here we are now down to the Fatal Four. The champion of the tolerance region is for Hamas. They'll take on the champions of the diversity region. The 8th-seeded rights come from where? Over on the right side of the bracket, the equity region champion is the National Cathedral Witch, and she takes on the champion of the inclusion region, the 3-seeded trans uterus. Look for the voting thread later today. Who makes it to the catastrophe finale? Vote on Steve's X account at Steve Day Show. And that's what happened while we were away.
Wow, we've got a couple of Cinderellas there. A couple of Cinderellas there. And we identified them as Cinderellas on Selection Monday. But I don't know that did either one of us think that was going, both of them were going to go to the Final Four simultaneously?
Fatal Four.
Or the Fatal Four, thank you.
I don't think so.
Don't want to get sued by the NCAA.
Thank you very much. Fatal Four is a cooler name anyway.
Yeah.
And then thoughts on Dick Levine going down to for Hamas. Thoughts on that?
Okay.
I think it's just because people want us to keep saying for Hamas over and over again. I appreciate that. It's taking me extra time to edit the show every single Monday for the past month.
Okay. Dick Levine was my pick. I mean, I thought he was going all the way.
There were no close matchups this week either. They were all pretty much.
Here's the thing. I'm not trying to. I thought he was going to go all the way and win the thing. Okay. The stuff is so ridiculous you can't talk about it on any level at all. I mean, it's that profane. It's that awful, terrible. That unintentional double entendres are maybe always the best. I thought Dick Levine was just going to win the thing. Okay. I mean, I don't even know what to say in the context of what that dude has done to himself. Right.
Just a reminder, that is his real name.
It is.
Richard Levine.
Yes.
Another name for Richard is Dick.
Correct. Aaron's montage brought to you by our friends over at the King of Kings movie, the latest from our friends over at Angel Studios. This has a all-star cast, and I should say, for the grammar Nazis out there. And an all-star cast. We're talking people that have been nominated for Academy Awards, won Academy Awards: Ben Kingsley, Forrest Whitaker, Kenneth Branagh. You've got Pierce Brosnan, Oscar Isaac, who was Joseph in the Nativity story. He voices Christ in this story. Beautiful animation. It's the perfect film for your family here for this time of year. I've not yet seen it. They've been offering me a screener for about a month, but I want to go see it in theaters when it comes out for the first time and react to it. That's why I haven't seen it yet, because it looks incredible. And the send-off of telling the story, or the MacGuffin of the story, is Charles Dickens telling the gospel story to his own son, right? So, I mean, I love that as a storytelling device. So if you want to get your tickets today, angel.com/Steve. That's angel.com/Steve. Again, The King of Kings, theater soon at angel.com/Steve. Okay. I mentioned at the top of the show, we're in the midst of a massive paradigm shift right now. And I think a lot of worldviews are being tested. And I think also there's a lot of people who do have their retirements and a lot of other things wrapped up into these markets. And, you know, I don't think we should go overboard in ridiculing their concern.
Agreed.
Okay. I also think that other worldviews, though, and this is what I was alluding to before your montage, Aaron, there's a lot of built-in worldviews that I think were predicated on a state of play. And now it seems like, well, what's the plan then? Okay, these are going to be reciprocal, but now you're changing the terms to the trade deficits themselves. How are you going to do this without tanking the dollar? Because the American people, so we're going to pay better wages to bring all these manufacturing jobs back home. They're going to be fine with paying way more expensive prices for these goods. You know, these are the various, and they're not terrible questions, by the way. They're not. But I think, and we are predominantly a worldview show. So let us step into the void of what we do, uniquely, I think. And I think you have to understand the arc of history and what happens to powerful nations, and why your history books are often very long, but but they have short chapters. The civilizations themselves have very short chapters. One of the longest chapters, by the way, is the Roman Empire. Yet one of the reasons why it's one of the longest is Rome had a spiritual rebirth of Christianity, and that extended its life. We have three paths forward as a people. Our current model of society is not sustainable, which is why we have 45% of the American people that think the country's on the right track, and that's the highest it's been since right after Obama first got elected in 2008 or something like that. And that's still underwater. We are, in terms of long-term trajectory, this is not sustainable. It is not sustainable to share a country where some states think they can take your kids if you don't let them mutilate your children against your will. And some states think that should be criminalized. That's not sustainable. Well, Steve, we once had states that thought they could take black people and enslave them, and other states who didn't. You're right. Was that sustainable?
No.
No, I believe we actually fought an actual civil war over that question, among others. This is not sustainable. And I think if we can't agree to that, if you disagree with that, then I respect your opinion. I don't share it. And what I'm going to say next will not matter to you at all. Won't be relevant to you. Or if you have the perspective of, I need this, you have what I would call a Hezekiah perspective. And at the dawn of his kingship in Israel, it says about Hezekiah that no one had celebrated the Passover since the time of Moses like he had. But then by the time we get to the end of his reign, and he's comfortable, as Todd likes to say, and now he's showing this new emerging rival that he thinks are his allies. They're called the Babylonians. And he brings them in and shows them all his awards and distinctions and trophies. And this prophet named Isaiah shows up and says, do you know who those people were that you just brought in here, that you were taking the credit for everything God did for you and through you? Those exact same people are coming back here in the not too distant future, and they're going to enslave They're going to enslave these Israelites. And Hezekiah's response is not remorse. It is not one of repentance. It is not one of, hey, you know what? Don't do that to the future generation. Put that on me. I'm the king. I should have known better. Instead, he asked the prophet Isaiah, asked him, what, was that going to happen when I'm here? And Isaiah says, no. We're good here then. And just kind of coast till his death.
That absolutely nails it.
And I think that if your perspective is, I'm cashing out my retirement next week, and I'm thinking of that as opposed to future generations and my ultimate legacy, then you're going to have a different perspective on those things. And by the way, I don't even think that's necessarily immoral. You worked for all of that your entire life. You probably were planning on passing some of that on to your progeny at some point, right? Okay. I'm not here to, this isn't a cut and dried situation by any means. No paradigm shift is, folks. No paradigm shift is. But it is what it is. And I'm just saying, if you're in one of those two camps where your concern is the immediate, or you were heavily vested in the previous paradigm, what I'm going to say to you next just will not be relevant to you. And that's okay. We don't have to see things the same way all the time, and we don't have to agree all of the time. For everyone else, here is the path forward we have as a people. And I believe there are only three options. And I don't think there's, you will attempt to nuance these options. It won't work. You have nuance when you have a spiritually mature people. When you have a spiritually mature people that understand what it means to love your neighbors, to love yourself, you can do nuance, because that requires nuance in and of itself. When you have a godless people, you cannot do nuance, and that's who we are right now. So these are the three paths before us. Number one, revival. Spiritual revival will be necessary to once again live within our means, to just stop printing money, seriously return to limited government. Because only a moral people doesn't turn theft, as in tithing with other people's money. That's what the welfare state is. Or covetousness. I'm entitled to that which doesn't belong to me because someone has more than me. You work for my retirement. You work for my health care. I couldn't make proper moral choices, so you subsidize me with Medicaid. That's covetousness. The idea that I'm entitled to something that doesn't belong to me, particularly from someone who I perceive to have more. When the scriptures say, hey, if someone steals from you because they are hungry, you're not angry with them, but they still must pay 4 times restitution of what they took. You are not to show partiality to the rich or the poor. Do not let the poor emotionally manipulate you. Do not let the rich intimidate you. Well, we have turned covetousness into a public policy. And so without revival, we lack the supernatural means required to restrain ourselves. If we could restrain ourselves without Christ, this wouldn't be the longest ongoing experiment in human freedom, folks. This country would not be. There would have been others to emulate, copy. We can't do it. Well, Steve, maybe we can, get close to our founding, whether or not we have revival. No, you had awakenings, then you had a founding. The country was literally founded by Puritans. The colonies were literally chartered by churches. One of the first acts of the U.S. Congress was commissioning Geneva Bibles to send out to the populace. The idea you're going to do this without spiritual reckoning, without a critical mass of people indwelt with the Holy Spirit, so they understand they are ultimately accountable to God. And it is a fearful thing to fall into the hands of the living God. Without a critical mass of people who understand these things, we cannot do this. That's why there's no other example for us to point to other than this country specifically founded by Christian ideals. Instead, well, Steve, natural consequences are kick in. You mean, Aaron, like when we all thought, because you were the first one that brought it up. I remember I looked at you that day. Today's the 4-year anniversary, Todd. Thank you for pointing it out, of Fauci and Bargain being the #1 best-selling book in the United States of America 4 years ago today.
The irony of all that?
I know.
Guess how I was reminded of that. An automatic reminder on the very social media site that you weren't allowed to say such. Honestly, that's what happened.
That's crazy. Do you remember when Aaron said over there and he said, guys, these lockdowns aren't going to last long. I mean, people are going to lose their minds to have their depravity taken away from them and their comfort and their pleasure. Remember that?
Yeah,
and we looked at each other and said, you know what, dude, that was brilliant.
Yeah.
And you know what, you know, at least we finally found the idol greater than safety, right?
Mm-hmm.
As Ethel Bunker once sang, those were the days. Yeah, we thought that was one of the most brilliant observations in the history of this show. That lasted for 10 minutes. And we found out, nope, natural consequences cannot do it. Cannot do it. Cannot do it. Instead, what happens as the natural consequences mount as they are in our time right now, people will turn to government all the more. That's actually what history shows. This also explains why no one ever loses an election by spending too much money. The people get what they want. We're going to have government by the consent of the governed, no matter what. It's just a matter of what we're going to be consenting to. And the state of the people doing the consenting. So there's no nuance here, I believe. Not possible to reach anything close to the founding vision of the country without revival first. We had awakenings, then we had a founding. Without a critical mass of the people indwelt with the Holy Spirit. Now, what that is, I don't know. Is that a significant plurality? Is it a significant minority? Is it a majority? I don't know the answer to that. I don't know. I just know we're nowhere near it right now. I know that. I don't know what it is. I just know we're nowhere near it right now. Can I get a witness on that?
Correct.
Okay. Number 2. And if this were a map, it would say, you are here. This is where we are. Our second option on the table is empire. If we're not going to reduce our spending the spending that's going out on any significant level, and there's no critical mass politically to do so, outside of a few God-fearing people who still have Florida Gators in their Bible and DeSantis 28 hashtags, there literally is no other constituency in America. Outside of audiences to shows like this, unfortunately, there is no other constituency in America for the severe, serious reduction in government. It just doesn't exist. And by the way, how's the Florida legislature repaying Ron DeSantis as we speak for all that successful limited governing he did for him the last 6 years? How are they doing with that? Hey, Ron, thank you for establishing that. Like, we put all the Gators in our Twitter bios too. Hashtag DeSantis28, hashtag Team Reality. Thank you for inspiring us, Ron, for showing we really were a movement and a true conservative. Is that what's going on in the Florida legislature right now? No, it's not. Not by a long shot, in fact. Not by a long shot, in fact. So this is where we are. There is no critical mass politically to stop the amount of spending that is going out. So that leaves you with only one other option. We got to significantly increase the revenues coming in. And there's 2 options for that. We can do it off the backs of one another. That's the Democrat plan, right? The other option is we make other countries pay for it. And that's what Red Caesar's trying to do right now. Someone's paying for this. And the Democrat answer is, you pay, you pay, you pay, you pay. That's the Democrat answer. Trump's going to see if he can get them to pay. May not work. We're going to find out. That's why it's hello, Greenland. Tariffs anyone. The Gaza Strip becomes the MAGA Strip. This is what conquerors must do. This is what empires must do. The cost of the bureaucracy doesn't stem the tide. It grows it. And so therefore, so must the revenues coming in. The tribute from the lesser countries must increase. Name me the domestic constituency that's going to volunteer and say, I will take a smaller slice of the pie. Do you know what the constituency is for that?
Currently,
there's 0.
Yeah.
No one's volunteering for that.
Which goes back to your point 1.
Point 1, correct. So that leaves us, therefore, then we have to grow the overall pie. That's the only other option. And in order to grow the overall pie, you have to act like an empire. This is what Trump is doing now.
Once again, funny ironies of all this. A republic, if you can keep it. That's what you're talking about. Who's the guy who said that, Steve? Was it the Puritan of all Puritans?
No, it was John Adams that said that. Yeah.
So, it was
with some really quirky theological beliefs of his own.
No, it was Ben Franklin.
Yeah.
Oh, Ben Franklin. Correct me.
That's
who also had even quirkier theological beliefs. But yes,
the guy who is just like, there's no all of this autopilot, this self-reinforcing stuff?
Mm-hmm.
No. Ben Franklin even knew, between bouts of whoring, if you can keep it. You can complain about the reality Steve is setting up for you all you want. You chose not to keep it.
So this is the reality.
Yes.
So what you're seeing with Trump is he sees the world as a series of mergers and acquisitions. He has profited off said system greatly. If you've ever seen the Manhattan skyline, it's a testimony to his success. And he's just applying this now to America. I mean, he's not a protectionist. He's an empire builder. He built an empire in his name. Took $1 million from his old man coming out of Wharton School of Business and built an empire with it. And empires have rise and fall, and his have risen and fallen a couple of times. But that's what he's doing. This is a series of mergers and acquisitions now. And I think you could morally justify it on the grounds that previous generations have given, for reasons, these foreign elements, how much of our money and for what ROI did we get from this? What exactly? Do you know? As the Gen X, millennial, Gen Zers inheriting all of this, what's the inheritance for all the previous generations gave to all these foreign interests?
Letting the barbarians inside the gate usually means that your gates end up getting torn down sooner or later. Yeah.
So this is where we are. Okay. And this is what Trump is going to try. He's going to. That's why, by the way, listen. Let me just say this. When you're an empire, you have to embrace it then. You can't be a little bit pregnant. So this is, let me just give you an example. The dumbest thing you could do right now is to say to Iran, hey, keep funding the Houthis and embargoing our ships. We can't afford to go to war right now because we've got enough of our own problems. That's the dumbest thing you could do. Because you're trying to exert leverage on the rest of these countries. Trump is basically saying to these countries, we're bigger and more powerful than you. Why are we paying you? You should be paying us. You should be feel lucky to share a planet with us. That's how empires should think. And it's always how they do. So if you're going to exert the level of soft power, don't take any form of power off the table. Because people, I don't think they really mean it. They really going to do it. They really going to do it. You turn around and say to the Iranians, we can't deal with you right now. Well, I don't know if I'm the legislature in Taiwan or China or any of the rest of these countries where we import a bunch of our goods. I'm taking that message as this is just all posturing, man. He doesn't really mean it. If you're good at being an empire, you're an empire. You don't ever take the gun away from the head. It's the red bandana scene every single day. You just get to choose who it is that's going to play today. So don't take number 2 unless you really mean it. The third option is death. Now, this isn't a country that will cease to exist, but this is what John Daniel Davidson at The Federalist in his brilliant book, Pagan America, a year ago, what he articulated. America will just become evil. And she becomes another godless, oligarchical, Western sacred democracy of right and left, which is really only a battle between whose vested interests, the corporations for the right and the communists for the left, does the tyranny imposed upon the people come from. Except unlike the other Western countries that have done this to their people, in this one, we own 400 million guns. So as terrible as this is played in these other countries, it'll go even worse here. But those are your 3 options, and there isn't a nuance. You may try to pick one. You're out of touch with the reality of the world in which we are in. That is no guarantee Trump will be successful. It's not even a guarantee he's choosing the right battle to fight. But these are the paths forward. This is it. So unless the people are willing to limit themselves, then we're going to have to exert our leverage and power across the globe and act like an empire to bring in more revenue than we currently have. Those are your only 2 options unless you just want to die. Thoughts?
That was fantastic. That last option, by the way, lest you think, well, no, I want to take that. That's the cipher from the Matrix option. Ignorance is bliss. Even though you know you're in a pod ruled by metallic overlords, but you prefer it nonetheless. Be honest with yourself.
We'll come back. I know Bob Vanderplaats has some things to say about this as well. We'll get to that here in a moment. All right, back here on the Steve Deace Show, powered by our friends over at My Patriot Supply. Things look a little uncertain again right now. Well, they're doing something in My Patriot Supply they have never done before. Right now, you can get their best-selling mega 3-month emergency food supply for the same price as the standard kit. That's more than $360 worth of real beef, real chicken, farm-fresh fruits and vegetables included at no extra charge. Even better, this kit now gives you 2,500 plus calories per day, more than any other emergency food supply I've seen out there. So let's be honest, things can go sideways. You never really know. And even though we are undergoing some form of reset of the reset, as we just talked about, there's no guarantee how our rivals are going to react to this. It's not as if they're just going to simply say, by golly, you guys go ahead and get your leverage back. You're adorable. So things could get uncertain. Make sure you're ready just in case. That could never happen here. Happens where you are. Again, go to preparewithdace.com. It stays fresh for up to 25 years, ships fast and discreetly. Preparewithdace.com. Claim your mega kit while the offer lasts at preparewithdace.com. Let's welcome in our good friend, Bob Vanderplaats. It is good to see you again, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing really well. Good to be with you.
So your thoughts on what's going on here with the paradigm shift, the attempt to essentially reset the Great Reset. There's a lot of nervous people. I think there's justifiable reasons to be nervous. If you worked your whole life to retire and you've got an imminent retirement and you were planning on maybe passing on some of that to your kids, the market uncertainty, the timing could not be worse for you. On the other hand, if you're the younger generations and you're thinking, we gave all this money to all these global interests and wars and everything else for decades, and what did I get at? So I can now buy, and also I could just go buy a 65-inch 4K TV at Walmart for $400. That was it. Mm-hmm. All the rot gut, all the hollowing out of our cities, all of that was just so I could get a big screen TV for cheaper at Walmart. That's not enough of a bargain in return, right? And so there's generational differences to this. There's ideological differences to this. And there's no guarantee of how our enemies and rivals in the global marketplace are going to ultimately respond to this as well. So just kind of what are your thoughts? I laid out mine before you came on, but what are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I think people need to take a look at it for what it is. You have smart people, really smart people, both in finances, politics, whatever it might be, who are on both sides of this issue. They're taking very visible different sides here. And I think the reason they are is that nobody really knows what's going to happen. But I think what President Trump saw, as a matter of fact, when the the former vice president, Mike Pence, was in these offices, he talked to our team and to our board about what a financial reality that this country has to face, and that we need to take on entitlements. And if you're not going to take on entitlements, where are you going to get it? And so when you take a look at Trump and his administration, he's going, listen, this country has right now a $1.9 trillion with a T, trade deficit. So we need to address this issue. And the only way to address the issue is take away the disparity with trade. And so I've often said, Steve, when I ran for governor and taught in economics as well, free trade is not fair trade. And so there needs to be a reciprocal nature to the trade, and that's what Trump is reasserting now. And his belief is you need America more than we need you. And if we need America more than we need you, guess who's got the leverage? America does. So I'm going to start using these tariffs as a means to bring you to the negotiating table to lower the tariffs on our goods so we can expand our markets, as well as to make it more and more at home versus having to import your products. And so what you're seeing with this is Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He's in D.C. today. It's an impromptu visit. I believe Trump will have a press conference with him later this afternoon. And I think Netanyahu is going to announce that with Israel, it's going to be 0% tariff on America-made products. What Trump can then do is highlight that that's a win. If Trump is successful by restating this being Liberation Day, he will look brilliant. And it will be the leadership that you needed for this country. And I believe that he's in now for the second term versus the first term. He knew this the first term as well. But now the second term, and he doesn't have to worry about re-election. And so I got to believe he really, really believes this. to reset this if you're still going to want to have the government that the government continues to put forward. But he's doing the Doge effort on one side, the tariff efforts on the other side.
So this morning, NBC News reported that there is a handful of U.S. senators who have signed on to sponsor a bill limiting the president's tariff power. Now, of course, he would just veto this, and there's nowhere close to the votes probably to override it, okay, in both houses, all right? But one of the co-sponsors, according to NBC News, is Senator Grassley.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
This is Senator Grassley. This is not a new issue for Senator Grassley, first of all, because typically, if you take a look at a state like Iowa, a highly agricultural state, when you get into a trade war, it's your farmers that are going to take the hit. So he's been a big proponent initially about having Congress limit anybody's ability to impose tariffs, that they get a chance to take a look at that first. Right now, there's not near enough co-sponsors to say you're going to get the needed votes in order to do that. But if this doesn't play out quickly, so with Trump, in essence, Steve, I believe he is relying on his negotiating skills. He's the chief negotiator. He understands art of the deal. If he gets wins, this thing's going to turn around fairly quick. People are going to go, you know what, this is probably good for the country, and you're going to see the market rebound. If he doesn't get those wins, and all of a sudden you start getting countries like China and Japan and others digging in and saying, we're going to have this huge tariff deal, and we're going to set in on the trade war, now you're going to get a guy like Ted Cruz who's saying on his podcast, tariffs are, in essence, a tax on the American people. You're increasing the taxes because somebody's got to pay for the increase of goods. And if that happens, the political reality is going to be we're going to have a bloodbath in 2026. So if this thing doesn't come around quickly with Trump having some wins, I think now you could see more and more people in the Senate and the Congress buy into what Grassley is trying to promote.
So I think your analysis is correct, but I think here's the thing, and I would say this to Senator Cruz, who I used to work for, I adore.
Yep.
I agree tariffs are a tax if you have an actual free market. I agree that they are. Okay. And really, it was until probably about 5-6 years ago. That's what I thought we had. All right. And it's pretty clear we don't. Okay. And so how do you have a sustainable free market when the countries you're primarily doing business with, like China, have command economies with glorified slave labor?
Yep.
And they can pay their labor anything they want. Okay. And limit their behavior in any ways they choose to, in order to then those goods get shipped here so that they're cheap for us to buy. Okay. How's that a free market?
So real quick, Steve, to that point, I don't know how many of your audience listeners and viewers are motorcycle riders, but there are companies out there called Kawasaki, Yamaha, Harley Davidson, Indian. Those are motorcycle brands. Guarantee if you go to Japan or if you go to the Asian continent, you are not going to see a lot of Harley Davidsons or Indians over there. Why? Because they're made in America. But you're going to see a lot of Yamahas and Kawasaki's here in this country. That's when you're saying, how is this a free trade? Well, it's free trade, but it's not necessarily fair trade. And that's what Trump is trying to get to. So he's trying to do a reset, which, frankly, I applaud his bold and courageous spirit because he's looking after America's best interests so that we can be, in his words, make America wealthy again.
I agree with that, but I think we actually can't make this about a quick turnaround. I think we have to go all the way to the mattresses because back to my previous point, the many of the economies in India, which produces a ton of goods, has one of the largest consumer classes, a caste system. It's literally religiously embedded into the society that you can have a permanent underclass of people. Okay, China has done so as a state, a permanent underclass of people or worker class. Okay, so if those are countries where the scales aren't equally balanced here, and therefore they can hold out here and see if the president is serious by imposing harsh realities upon their people that they don't own 300 or 400 million guns like our people do. They don't have the kind of liberty our people do. They're not as drunk on comfort as our people are. All various combinations of factors. All right. If I were advised, if I was in Peking or Beijing, or if I was in New Delhi, that's what I'd be saying. Dude, just hunker down. All right. He's got political realities. He's got a congressional midterm next year.
Question.
He could lose 50 House seats, and he's a lame duck. He'll be 80 years old, termed out. We just hunker down. We can put our people down. We can roll more tanks through Tiananmen Square if we want to. Okay. And I think this is actually where you have to be fully invested in this, to the point that Reagan was with tax cuts, and he's looking at a recession of 81 and a recession of 82, and he got destroyed in the 82 midterm elections. But he understood, I can't be a little bit pregnant. If I'm going to go down this road, I got to finish the task. And I think that's actually where Trump is at. Because if I were advising these other nations, I'd be sitting there saying, you can hold out on him politically. See if he gets weakened by this. He's got senators in his own political party out there trying to limit his power. The morning after, he's got prominent commentators on his own team out there saying, this is why we got to let Iran get away with literal murder, because we can't afford a war. All right, he's got all kinds of pressures right now. We can wait him out. We can put our people through 3, 4, 5 Stalingrad winters if we have to, because we'll just run them over. All right, and we'll see if they've really got the stomach to go through with this.
So what you just iterated was the 3 Ps. One is the person. The person is Donald Trump. Nobody else has got the courage or the boldness to do what he's doing right now. And I believe he has got the steadfast ability to say, I'm going to see this thing through. I know I only have one term, but I'm going to see this thing through because this is in the best interest of our country. So I think you have Trump there. Politically, I think you hit it. Free trade isn't fair trade. There needs to be a reciprocal nature of this if we're going to have the best interest of our country in. The politics is where everybody's concerned about. And their politics is because our country, more than any other country, has attention deficit disorder. Take a look at what just happened in Wisconsin last week, Tuesday night, a state that Trump won in impressive fashion, and all of a sudden they elect a liberal judge, everything that Trump's against, by 10 points. We have attention
deficit. Well, then
deficit.
turning around and voting for voter ID by an even wider margin than that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, Steve, what it is, they have attention deficit disorder. The other thing about Americans is when you talk about the lap of luxury, can I have my big screen TV? Can I have all these goods I want? When you hit us economically, and all of a sudden my 401k drops, and all of a sudden the cost of everything's going up, they're going to punish you at the ballot box. And so you're right. All these foreign countries may be looking like, I wonder if America's got we think Trump does, but does America have the will to do it? So what that behooves people like you, people like President Trump and his administration, even people like me at the Family Leader, educate about what is in the best. You need to get in front of the narrative train as well about why this is in the best interest. He did it when he addressed the Joint Congress when he said, listen, this could be a bumpy ride. The reason he's saying it could be a bumpy ride, he knows things initially are probably not going to work out the way you want it. But if he can start showing some really good wins with some countries, and the countries believe he knows it, this will turn out really good for him. But it's too early to assess right now.
Aaron, you've been quiet so far. What are your thoughts on what you've heard from me and then from me and Bob?
Well, I think a lot of people need to take deep breaths, just deep breaths right now. I mean, because even from the right, even from Trump supporters, certain Trump supporters over the weekend, it was as if the sky was falling. I mean, this was COVID level hysteria on Friday. It was absolutely nuts. So I think a lot of people need to take a very deep breath. And here's why. And this is either an indictment of the administration or it's just the plan working out. People don't truly know how these tariffs, they don't know for certainty how they are being used. Is it a tool to isolate China? Is it a leverage point just to get better trade deals? Is it an effort to reshore critical industry back into the United States to some degree? That can't happen overnight. But is it a combination of all of these efforts? We don't know for certainty. Or is it just a long-term plan to raise revenue for the United States? We don't know for certainty what the plan is here. But I think what's driving a lot of the hysteria is that people think that they know for certain what is the play here, and it's driving them nuts. So we need to let this play out a little bit longer, because if it is a tool to just produce revenue long term and in a permanent fashion, I don't think a coexistence of high tariffs along with an income tax, I don't see how that's sustainable for 90% of people in this country. If it's a leverage point just to isolate China, which I'm increasingly becoming convinced of on some level to basically put together a coalition to hit back at China's unfair practices for the last generation. I think we need to let that play out, but we don't know for certain. And I think it's because this is a grand negotiation here. If you're sitting at the negotiating table, you're not going to telegraph to the general public what your desired outcome is. And I don't even know if the administration knows what their desired outcome is. They're putting leverage on the table and they're seeing what they can get. So I think people just need to take a deep breath. Deep breath in, deep breath out. I do believe you are right to be concerned, not hysterical, but concerned if you're close to retirement. I think you have a right to be concerned about what's happening here, but I don't think it does any good. I mean, we just lived through this 5 years ago. Just panic and mass hysteria, I don't think does anybody any good.
Bob, I'll give you the last word.
I think Aaron's right. However, we have proven ourselves not to be a country that's really good at deep breaths. No. we go moment to moment and we do quick analysis and quick assumptions. I do think what Trump is, though, he sees a $1.9 trillion trade deficit as being unsustainable, and I'd say he's correct on that. Implementing DOGE by saying we're too addicted to government, I believe he's correct on that. However, Steve, I think what you had in your post, is this really about a spiritual revival? Because we have handed off all of our duties and responsibilities to the government.
Yes.
It used to be when you had a breakdown in the family, you went to the extended family. You went to grandpa and grandma, aunt and uncle. And if the extended family wasn't there, you went to the church. If the church wasn't there, you went to your local community. But the last place you went was to government. And today, that's the first place we're going is to government. And that needs as much of a reset as a trade imbalance needs a reset.
And if I may, because I'd like to hear what you think about it.
We've got 40 seconds.
Breaking down the family happened because we shipped a lot of our jobs overseas. That's why this whole tariff thing is a tax on the people. Well, 150 countries have tariffs on us. Yeah. How could they afford them? They got our manufacturing jobs.
That is part of it, Todd, as well. But the other reason the breakdown of the families became all about me. It came about the big guy in family, about this is what I want, this is what I deserve, and we have a breakdown of family. The root cause is we've handed way too much over to government that should have stayed within the church.
At the very least, we are having a fascinating and I think long overdue conversation.
Amen.
And that's something that this paradigm shift has generated for sure. But again, the countries that we most need to leverage, they are not going to be, I'm not here to sell you sunshine, even though I agree with what I think is the larger footprint attempt here. But our competitors and rivals aren't just going to say, by golly, you're right. We should make this fair. They're not going to just roll over and do that.
No way.
All right, so prepare for that. Ask Me Anything is next. Stay tuned. All right, back here with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. Steve Deace here with Aaron McIntyre and Todd Erzin and all of you. And you can all let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox. Do that by emailing the show, steve@stevedeace.com. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook, MeWe, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Instagram, and TikTok. Please subscribe to our new YouTube channel, at Deace Show on YouTube. That's at Deace Show on YouTube, where we had to start all over again here this year because of all the censorship we faced for the previous few years. All right, so help us out on that new YouTube channel, at Deace Show on YouTube. And then you can also help us out if you listen to the podcast version of the show. Leave us a 5-star review, especially now. We are in a new category in the show. We are just becoming completely or increasingly convinced we have to disciple the churches. And so we have taken the extraordinary step of moving our show into the religion and spirituality category on iTunes. That's still, by and large, the most or the biggest way you guys access our show, all right, because of the proliferation of iPhones in our audience. So please leave us a 5-star review today. It'll help us to continue to pop in that category. And then also hit subscribe, or if you are on iTunes or Apple, hit follow. That'll make sure that every time we do a new episode, it shows up in your feed every time. Also, I forgot to mention this. If you could give us a like on our Facebook page, especially right now, Because there's some evidence that maybe some of the shadow banning and crushing of our Facebook account they had been doing for years is maybe starting to let up a little bit. I want to test that, right? So definitely make sure you like us on our Facebook page today. And the Facebook page you want to go to, there's a few of them out there claiming to be me. The Blaze has one. But the main one I'm concerned about is facebook.com/Steve Deace, my name. Facebook.com/Steve Deace. All right? Because that's the one that predates even the relationship with the Blaze that they have just crushed for years. And we are brought to you by our friends over at Beam Organics. And took my dream powder from Beam again last night. Got another great night of sleep here as well. You know, more and more we are learning we have to take responsibility for our own health. All right? For our family, for our future. It's also very difficult to be as productive as you want to be in that regard without a good night's sleep. And that's where the Beam Dream Powder comes in, proudly funded and founded in America by people who share our values, hard work, integrity, delivering results. It's a science-backed, healthy nighttime blend with ingredients shown to improve sleep so you can wake up refreshed and ready to take on the day. It's made of a powerful blend of all natural ingredients like reishi, magnesium, melatonin, and more. And it's already helped improve over 17.5 million nights of sleep, including mine just last night. Helping people across the country wake up, feel their best. Don't worry, it's not loaded with sugars and carbs, because I know what you're thinking. I love hot cocoa, but I really want to drink that right before I go to bed. It's not loaded with any of that stuff, all right? So here's the deal. Beam is giving our listeners and viewers the ultimate Patriot discount of 40% off right now to try their best-selling Dream Powder and get up to 40% off for a limited time. Go to ShopBeam, B-E-A-M, as in Mary. ShopBeam.com/Steve. Use code Steve at checkout. That's ShopBeam.com/Steve. Use code Steve for up to 40% off and support an American company. Invest in yourself and start getting your best sleep tonight. And with that, it is time to ask me anything. Todd has curated your questions, selected the ones that he thinks would be the most interesting for various reasons for us to answer on today's show, courtesy of our followers on Facebook. Aaron, you have the questions. Of course, I've not seen any of them, so you're going to hit me with them cold, starting right now.
This comes from Jason Sixsmith, who asks, could you please write a book on parenting called Wiffle Ball with Anastasia?
That's a reference to engendering a certain competitive fire into Anastasia when she was a little girl. And when we used to do Easter egg hunts at church, they used to put like the little kids like in the classrooms. I never let her go in there. I mean, if she could walk, I put her out there in the big yard with all the other kids. In the first year, you know, she kind of struggled. By the second or third year, I mean, it was survival of the fittest in a good way, man. I mean, she was out there cutting the boys off, outrunning the boys. All right. So
this book, it would look like, have you ever seen that video where the Little League coach is making mound visits to like 12-year-olds, and he's talking to them like he's Earl Weaver? And that's what this book would feel like. And I would buy it. I would buy copies and hand it out.
The point, though, is that's why I kind of laugh. I mean, if you know either one of our girls, neither one of them are shrinking violets in any way, shape, or form. They're both also very feminine, but they're also very independent in their own ways. But I didn't want it to be self-destructive either, you know? And that is one thing as a parent I think that I did right is all of the kids are competitive in some respects, maybe too much in some respects, but not like necessarily in destructive ways. But I'm just going to tell you right now, show me a gracious loser and I'll show you a loser. All right. Yeah. And now that doesn't mean, you know, hey, I lost, so when we shake hands afterwards, I throw a punch or make some punk move like that. What it means is I hate this feeling and I don't want to ever feel it again. So whatever it takes between now and the next competition, so I don't have to feel like this, you know, so I can win this thing, I'm going to do it. So that's America, baby. I mean, Christ and competitive spirit. I mean, that's literally how we built a country here. Okay. And the greatest country that the earth has ever seen. So that's America.
Next up, we go to Sandra Marie Hart, who asks, how is it that the comment sections of your Israel posts and or Bible posts are so full of anti-Zionist, anti-Semitic replacement theology and Jew haters?
So first, let me say this. I don't believe that if you no longer believe that there is not a prophetic place for the nation of Israel, that you are any form of a inherently anti-Semite or Jew hater. In fact, you would have probably just been a Christian between about the 5th century and the 19th and the 20th. That is essentially what, and I have to keep resetting these things because we have not done a good job of passing on our traditions and church history and things of that nature. So it is, I don't want to conflate those two things. Is it true that anti-Semites can use quote unquote replacement theology as a fig leaf for their anti-Semitism? Is that true? Sure. And can I use dispensational eschatology as a fig leaf to be way more concerned about, how much more square footage of the Temple Mount the Israelis have taken back more than what's going on in my own elder board or school board? Can I do that too? Yes, I can do that too.
It's all on the table of a depraved heart. Yes.
Correct. I mean, the reality is that the eschatological views of the last generation had most Christians way more aware of the maneuvers of the Israeli Defense Force than their state legislature. Can I get anybody want to deny that to me?
Yes.
Okay.
That's perfect.
It's true.
It's just perfect.
It's absolutely true.
I know.
Okay. You were probably way more aware of who the prime minister of Israel was than who your state representative was.
That's another book you could write.
Okay. So my point being, that doesn't mean that dispensationalism is wrong either. My point is, the one thing the human race is truly great at, regardless of era, custom, creed, socioeconomic status, is we are master idolaters. We're masters at it. A couple weeks ago, Amy and I got to babysit Autumn to give Stephen and Anna a date night. So we rode out to Pella and watched Autumn. Longest time we've had with her yet, and had a blast. Until at one point, Autumn did something she was not supposed to. I know. If you've seen her pictures, hard to believe something that adorable just isn't perfection in motion. But eventually, she did attempt to do something we thought was not good for her. And Grandma Amy at some point then said a magic word to Autumn. Can you imagine what that word was?
No.
Do it.
Nice. She said no. And I've got to tell you, the countenance on that adorable little face, guys, barely 1 year old, it changed like that. And she went from, look at me and how cute I am, to, what you talking about, Willis? You don't tell me no. We come out of the womb masters of idolatry. We can turn even good and righteous things into idols. Maybe you've got family members who turn church attendance into an idol, meaning they have to be involved in like everything at church to the point they have no time for their own family, for themselves, because the whole church will just fall apart if they're not like on every committee and involved in every little thing. We can turn anything into idolatry. We can turn it, marriage. When Moses says, for this reason a husband will leave his family and cleave to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. The same Hebrew word he uses there for one to describe a marriage. Later, when Moses gives the Israelites the sacred prayer, the Shema, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God is one." That's the same Hebrew word. Yeah, we can turn a marriage into an idol. Well, I'm gonna. My wife is telling me that if I don't disobey God and go to a gay affirming church, she'll leave me. Well, are you going to stand naked and alone before your wife in eternity? Nope. See what I'm saying? We can make an idol out of anything. So I want to make sure we're not conflating what has actually been the historical Christian eschatological view of the nation of Israel until the early 20th century. This has been the traditional view. Basically, almost every great figure of Christianity from the post-apostolic era to about the 1940s, or a little bit earlier, believes some variation of what we call today replacement theology. So with that disclaimer addressed, the rest of what you put in there is 100% spot on. And I can't tell if this is a real thing in the larger culture or it's just being heavily incentivized for various reasons on social media. How much of this is real people? How much of it, we've talked in past cycles about Trump buying bots, Democrats buying bots, Russians buying bots online, right? I would imagine Qatar can buy bots, can't they? Think the Iranians could afford some bots? You see what I'm saying? That's the problem with, there's always a trade-off. And so the trade-off of having a freer discussion online, because you hear the people, and that's why I'm going to Blue Sky, because I can't put up all the anti-Semites. So I'm going to go hang out with the pedophiles on Blue Sky instead. There's no way around a trade-off, particularly when anonymity is involved. When you are going to allow freedom and anonymity, you're going to get underbellies like this where people don't have to be accountable directly for things. That's just the trade-off. But there is no doubt that either these algorithms or the amounts of bots being purchased by real anti-Semites has greatly grown in the last year or two, wouldn't you say? Especially on X.
Yeah.
Especially on X. If the trade-off of Elon Musk and what he's done in total with that platform has been a great blessing to liberty, the trade-off has been I have to really work to avoid just blatant and often stupid anti-Semitism in my feed on a regular basis.
And how long has the For You aspect been available? Because that's part of it too. Things that we would have not necessarily
seen. And that's where I see most of it, yes.
In the past.
Yeah.
Now, because we talk about religion and stuff all the time, it comes into you unless you block it.
Yes. So it's a real issue. One of the things I said at the Right Response conference I spoke at this weekend, and I'm hoping they're going to put the footage of my talk up at some point here this week so I can share it with you. We ended up recording it too because we weren't sure, and the audio sounds good, but in terms of video, it's just Amy holding my cell phone from the first row, so we couldn't air that from a video standpoint. But in the previous generation, the pastors of the previous generation watered down the word in order to draw a crowd. Just apparently the word couldn't draw a crowd on its own, I guess. So they had to water it down to make it palatable. They had to edit it. This era of pastors have to be careful in the opposite direction. In that you can have a church of, say, 50 people and have 50,000 X followers. And what you would do to gain that level of engagement would probably be the kind of rage posting and provocative posting you'd never do from a pulpit in a million years. See what I'm saying? It's kind of the opposite problem.
Yeah.
So the previous era, it was, imprecatory prayers, never heard of them. Hell, what is it? See what I'm saying? Take all the challenging aspects of the faith, okay? And take them all out. So people have never heard Ezekiel preached line by line. They've only heard Jeremiah 29:11. They've not heard the entire rest of the book ever preached in an evangelical church. Do this for an era to draw a crowd. The issue that I think the next generation has is to over-amplify the provocative stuff. So that John the Baptist is only the guy that calls Herod a whoremonger and his wife a whore in the street. He's never the guy that says, I must decrease so that he will increase. One is coming, I'm a nobody. One is coming whose sandals I'm not even fit to tie. He's never that guy. He's only the provocative guy. You see what I'm saying?
Of course.
Because the guy who saying, I am not fit to tie Christ's sandals will not get you the engagement online that standing in the street and calling Herod a whore and his wife a whoremonger will. See where I'm going with this? And so you're able to actually grow a following way bigger than you'd ever attract in your own pulpit by saying very provocative things, often out of context, or certainly not in any context you'd ever say from a pulpit. And at that point, you need to ask yourself, do I want to be Steve Deace or a pastor? If you want to do that, that's part of my job. Part of my job is I have to figure out how to prophetically say things from a narrow road to attract a wide audience. So I use expressions and things all the time I would never use if you had me come speak in your pulpit. But I don't bear the title of pastor. You do. And therefore, everywhere you go, said title you bear. You're never not one. You chose the gig. You answered the call. You didn't have to. Could have said no. So you answered the call. And in exchange for God granting you an extraordinary amount of intimacy with individual people and the arc and direction of their lives and the influence that goes with that, there's a trade-off again. And that trade-off is just like a soldier sacrifices at least some of their liberty to serve the higher good of the military command, you are doing the same thing. You are giving up some of your own agency. That maybe there are some things you just don't say. And I don't mean that in a sweater vested way. I mean that in a prudence way. Because the juice isn't worth the squeeze. Because if you're a pastor, if you wouldn't say it in your pulpit, you should never say it online, ever. If you wouldn't say it in your pulpit, you should never say it online. You're a pastor. And so you can get all these anons. And who knows how many of them are bots? Frankly, who knows how many of them are subversively bought bots in order to flood the zone with Christians acting like anti-Semitic clowns, have us just walk right into that trap and brand ourselves. We don't know. We don't know who's real, who's subversive. We don't know. And when you stake your platform around attracting people you don't know, as opposed to the people you look straight dead in the eye every Sunday in a pulpit, that is a bridge to nowhere. Welcome to stepped on a Rakesville. And it will hurt every time. I'm not sure that's the answer to the question she was looking for, but it's the best one I got. We'll go to the next question after we tell you about our friends over at Patriot Mobile. They are on the cutting edge of America's parallel economy. And if you want to join them, you should. I mean, we have been with Patriot Mobile now since 2020. The last straw with us is when T-Mobile sent out a mass text to all of their clientele during COVID saying, or start screening your text for misinformation. That was enough. I said, you know what? I can hear Todd's voice. You're too comfortable. I didn't want to make the switch. It was going to be a hassle. I finally called him that day and I said, all right, man, whatever it takes, hook me up. I can't do this anymore. Haven't regretted it since. They've been great. Couldn't recommend them highly enough. U.S.-based customer service team. That means you can actually understand them. They've got opportunities on all the major networks out there. You can switch networks anytime you want, anytime you need to, if you're part of Patriot Mobile, and that's free. When you go to join, they'll start you, speaking of free, with a free month of service to get you started right now. So keep your phone, switch your phone, keep your number, switch your number, whatever you want to do. They'll customize it for you at patriotmobile.com/Steve. Get started with a free month of service today at patriotmobile.com/Steve. Again, that's patriotmobile.com/Steve.
Next up is Lisa Bassiner Freeman. I see so many Christians complaining about Trump and Musk cutting all these services. However, is it the job of the government to supply all of this? Biblically, Christians didn't rely on the government to help their fellow man. Christians have a mandate to take care of the poor and needy. Now we have outsourced to the government. Instead of spending all your money on yourself, isn't it time to step up and help those around you?
100% agree. Tithing, you get no credit for tithing with other people's money. In fact, that's called stealing. It's a violation of a commandment. Nor are you ever entitled to something that does not belong to you. Someone went to med school, they paid the cost of doing that, or took out the loans and are paying those back, maybe. Okay, but they had some level of outlay in order to learn that skill. For you to expect them to put out to learn that skill, and then you're entitled for them to just give it to you for nothing. That's covetousness. Almost any time you think you're entitled to anything is covetousness. And then furthermore, tithing with other people's money, there's no justice in that. That's just called stealing. So 100% correct.
This is the great
You want to
tragedy.
get nuts?
Let's get nuts. Yeah.
Given that you just said that in the context of this question, is the free market even possible? Is the free market model possible for healthcare? Truly.
No.
Now, it's better than the Frankenstein we have
Correct.
now in this country, the model that we have now.
No, because ultimately the cause of life does come before someone's. What commandment is listed first? Don't murder or don't steal? Murder. So murder is the higher value, right? So Rahab, how does she lie her way into Christ's messianic line? How come Corrie ten Boom didn't get rebuked by her pastor for lying to Nazis? Because what's the higher commandment here? Life is the higher value, right? And so in each of the cases, innocent life was being put unnecessarily, unfairly at risk by those questioning both Rahab and Corrie ten Boom, correct? Mm-hmm. And so therefore they upheld the higher law, the hierarchy of value here, that life is the higher law, right? Okay. Yeah. And so the idea of just having a purely robber baron mercantile system where life is at stake, no, okay? But see, that's what's your incentivization structure? For example, do you want to say to a doctor, hey, you know what? We might cut your interest rate for your loans in half. How about interest-free loans in exchange for a certain amount of documented charitable hours of you see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. What's the incentivization structure? See, that matters almost as much as the principle itself, because the incentivization structure determines which principles we're ultimately upholding here.
Yes.
Correct.
If the government is the source of the incentivization structure, that's bad almost every time. Okay?
Because just to put more meat on the bones here. So we've just established that a free market model is not sustainable when in the industry of healthcare, which shouldn't even be an industry. We're getting into this. So because the cause of life is on the line, an institution, you're saying, has to step in to fund and run healthcare. Mm-hmm. And that is going to be what? One of two things, right?
Mm-hmm. A charity or government.
Or charity.
Those are the only two options. Yes.
Keep going up that hierarchy of values. Yeah. This is where we talk all the way to the top. This is the tragedy of American compassion by Olansky that I talked about. You hand everything off to the government. Well, what you think you're gaining in efficiency in compassion ultimately turns it into an upside down. You're right. Faith, hope, and love. Which is the greatest of these? Love. And what's a synonymous word for love? Charity. It is the talk about meat on the bones. It's not ethereal. It's not a meditation. It is going out and helping your fellow man. That's taking your higher order thinking all the way to the top, and we tapped out on it.
100%.
I just thought it'd be interesting to explore that, because I've been told, reliably informed over and over again over the past 72 hours that free market, I've been dogmatically informed that free market must persist in every single entity and facet of our lives, and that anything other than that is Marxism, because that's apparently there's no...
So MetaShare, would that be Marxism then? A group of Christians coming together like in Acts 2 and sharing their medical. You guys used to belong to that, right? Sharing your medical bills and stuff in kind.
Yeah, we do Samaritans.
Yeah. Okay.
Andrew, interesting. Moving on. Gino Torrio asks, during your weight loss, what was the hardest part and how did you get through it?
For me, there is no silver bullet here. We're people. Not algorithms. So we all have different issues, biases, capabilities. For me, I got a sweet tooth, man. I just love sweets. If I don't eat something sweet every day, it feels like I didn't have a day in the life. Okay. I mean, we all have a vice. Some of you, it might be if I don't have a puff of a cigar. Okay. Whatever your vice is, for me, I love sweets. I love them. So figuring out a way where I can have them be a part of my life in forms of moderation so that they don't overwhelm my overall goals. And it has taken, it's taken years to figure this out. I got up to 400 pounds after being fairly athletic growing up. And I lost about 30, 40 pounds over the course of a couple of years just by cutting down the amount of breakfast cereal I was eating. Because when I went out on my own, I always wanted to have Jerry Seinfeld's shelf in the kitchen with all the breakfast cereals. All right. It's a miracle. I stopped eating like an entire box of Lucky Charms for breakfast and just had a bowl instead and just lost some weight doing that. Then I had to get way more intensive to lose another 100 pounds. I've got about 15, 20 more to lose to what was the goal that I had when I lost the first 100 pounds, like more than 10 years ago now, So it's also a lifestyle too. I don't think dieting works. That's why people do it over and over again. And I think you have to find a lifestyle that works for you. I don't think there's a panacea at all. I don't even think calories in and calories out is necessarily a panacea because of the way our food is made nowadays. So for example, Steve, if I just do 2,000, okay, if your entire 2,000 calories is Reese's peanut butter cups. No, won't work. You see what I'm saying?
Your entire 2,000 calories are Reese's peanut butter cups at 9 p.m. right before you go to bed.
That too, exactly. Yes. All right. So what is a healthy lifestyle that works for you? I've heard great things about carnivore. I've tried variations of it. Doesn't work for me. It destroys my digestion, makes me irregular. As much as I love meat, and there's a period of time every single day I have to make sure I am fully and freely available, and it can't just be, oop, that didn't sit well, got to eject, So that doesn't work for me. Maybe it works for you. Okay, cool. Then that's what you should do. And here's the thing too, don't turn this into an idol. Because the last I checked, the death rate remains a robust what?
100.
It's 100. We're all dying. Everything kills you. We're all dying. Everything kills you. Okay? So what are your life's goals? What is it? What kind of life is God calling you to? For me, this started twofold. One, finding out when we had a son and realizing if I kept on the path I was on, by the time he's in middle school, he's going to be able to kick my rear end. I'll be a terrible dad. The other thing, too, is then I get converted, and I can just tell that the amount of sloth I am exhibiting is undermining my own moral standing, for what I'm speaking out on. I got to discipline myself before I can expect anybody else to listen to what I have to say. So what is that thing for you, that driver for you? What's the quality of life for you? What is it that you ultimately want, provided it lines up with, what you think is God's purpose and plan for your life, and then aim for that and make it a lifestyle. That's the best advice that I would get, or give, I should say. We'll come back. More of your questions here on an Ask Me Anything next. Folks, you guys have been so generous to our friends over at Preborn. Thank you very much. Let's keep it going, especially now that we have to deal with chemical abortions, which potentially turns every single mailbox in America into an abortion mill. As many as 20% of women who undergo the chemical murder of their children suffer some form of complications, including a shocking amount of deaths as well. This pill continues to bring harm to moms and babies, and now it accounts for a majority of the baby murder in America. Preborn's network of clinics that are flooded daily with calls from women seeking help after taking this pill, regretting their decision. Some even come in with their aborted babies' remains, not even knowing what to do with them. Now, Preborn welcomes these women with open arms and offers them life-saving help, including the abortion pill reversal treatment if it's not too late. When you sponsor that kind of effort, or an ultrasound for a mom considering the murder of her child, and that cost as little as $28, you might be saving a life as soon as today. All right, so make your tax-deductible donation today to our friends over at Preborn. You will not regret the choice to save a life. Dial pound 250, say the keyword baby on your mobile phone. That's pound 250, say the keyword baby on your mobile phone, or go to preborn.com/Steve. That's preborn.com/Steve. All right, Aaron, more Ask Me Anything.
Next is Jeffrey Otto with the transfer portal and NIL money. Will the NCAA tournament become like college football and top seeds will win out like this year with only a few teams ever really having a chance? Will the best Cinderella can do is make the Sweet 16?
So in the interest of everybody the alarmism of the era. You guys know I keep trends on this year after year after year that go back decades. We have only had one team seeded lower than 6th win an NCAA tournament ever. That's happened twice. The 2 teams that did it were called Kansas was a 6 seed. Villanova was an 8 seed. These are 2 of the best college basketball programs of the modern era. Okay? So let's dispense with this idea that there's all these Cinderellas all the time. We had that get this far. We had a very unique Final Four the first year after COVID, where rosters had a lot of guys who had been in college sports a little bit longer, more experienced. And that was the year you had San Diego State and Florida Atlantic all make the Final Four. But that was the only time anything like that has ever happened. Okay. The trend lines of this tournament aren't much different than what the trend lines of the tournament have been since it expanded to 64 teams in 1985, with one exception. We didn't really have any of the small school Cinderellas. We still had a double-digit seed make the Sweet 16, as we always do, but the double-digit seed this year was your daughter's school, Arkansas, which may have had the highest payroll in college basketball. Okay? So that's the one thing that did not happen. But almost always by this stage of the tournament, by the second weekend, we are weeding out. You know, the reason why everybody remembers the year Steph Curry took Davidson to the Elite Eight, because that was the year that Steph Curry took Davidson to the Elite Eight. Most of the time, by the time we get to the second weekend, it was a nice run for Cinderellas, but the big boys will take it from here. All right? So it's not that different. What you are seeing is the margins of victory up until recently have been higher. Not just the results themselves, but the games themselves were less competitive. And I think that is indicative of what you're talking about there. But I also think we're getting into an era now. Now, this opens up a whole other can of worms. This House settlement that's supposed to take effect here, be ratified later this month. Is it today even?
I thought it was maybe even today.
Okay, maybe it is today. Here's the thing. I don't think that will last. The Supreme Court already told the NCAA in a 9-0 ruling that Brett Kavanaugh wrote the opinion, you cannot limit the compensation of your labor. And that's what led us down the road of the transfer portal and NIL and cost of attendance for athletes in the first place.
Wait, we trusted the experts and it didn't pan? No way. Knock me down with a feather, Steve.
And so I just have a hard time believing, it's the exact same Supreme Court, by the way. I have a hard time believing those same 9 people are going to turn right around and say, but except now you can. Because why? Because a key part of this settlement is in exchange for getting revenue sharing from the schools. The schools are also saying now that the NIL deals have to be actual NIL, meaning that someone is actually compensating you for an ad. You know, Culver's, based in Wisconsin, is really paying the star player on your basketball team, John Tonjes, to do an ad. Traditional name, image, and likeness, like the Olympic athletes did. Okay, and that has to go through a clearinghouse. Otherwise, it will be rejected. All right. That's another way of saying that you have the ability to limit what a school can pay a player and what labor can be compensated without collective bargaining or a contract. I don't think that will last either. So, but I also think we could see more balance come to the NCAA tournament for another reason, and that is all of the schools will be paying some of their players something. And I do think there are schools. Let me give you an example like Creighton. Creighton beat us for 2 transfer portal recruits this cycle, meaning Michigan. And it's not like Michigan has a lack of resources, but Michigan also is planning on paying its football players a lot of money. Creighton doesn't have a football program that matters. You see what I'm saying? I do think you could get to a scenario where the middle class of college basketball is closer to the upper class. I don't think the era of Loyola Chicago getting to a Final Four, you may never see that again. And you didn't see it that many times before, guys. That's what made it so unique. But I think what could very well happen is the next tier of teams that don't have football programs they have to worry about, they could get closer to the top level programs because of that. That I could see happening.
All right, moving on. Let's go.
Look on Todd's face. Hey, we only had this conversation because you put the question in there, brother. You did that. You played that one. I didn't pick that one.
Every rationalization, every justification of all of this nonsense is the very definition of idol worship. It is.
All right, screw it. Let's break down this 2028 GOP primary presidential poll. Aaron, you ready? I'm just kidding.
Oh, boy.
We're not doing that. I'm just kidding.
I just saw one, too.
That's what made me think of that. Yeah, and the troll Todd, yes.
Daniel Mason says, what advice do you have for people who try to stay politically active and informed but become exhausted with the glut of circus shows and grift from both sides? Have we as a nation become so conditioned in perpetuating the circus and getting our bread, or will we ever get back to rational politics?
I have no idea. Listen, it is show business, and so there's a reason why, we do fun things like Marxist madness and Pop Culture Tuesday and kvetch about transfer portal and the NIL, which that matters, but in the grand scheme of the conversation we were just having, it really kind of doesn't. So there's a reason why we do some of those things. One is our own mental health. But two, also to try to appeal to the broadest audience we can, because frankly, all of our various viewpoints on this program are pretty rigid and not all that flexible, right? So there has to be some entertainment factor, right? Let's not conflate that we're just here like the Ben Stein teacher in the Wonder Years, and this is the salamander, and it mates in May. No one's going to listen to that. We're human beings. Jesus told stories. We called them parables. They were some of his most effective preaching on the earth. That being said, though, yeah, we have a major problem along the lines of what you're talking about. He's probably going to kill me later for telling you this, but I'm going to do it anyway because it fits into this conversation. In one of our private text threads over the weekend, Daniel Horowitz texted me that he was just on his last nerve with low IQ conservative grifters. Okay? Now, the funny thing about Daniel...
How many last nerves does he have?
That's the 64th time he has texted that to me over the years. Yes. Okay. Yes. And I texted back to him something along the lines of, it's kind of a reflection of who we are as a people. And he texted me back, it's just people don't read anything. They just look at headlines nowadays. I said, in other words, we have a low IQ people, right? Think of who you think the worst grifters in our industry are. And let's say you could just chloroform platforms of their presence. No need to even mention any names. Just whoever those names are in your head. And let's say you had the power to chloroform them off every platform instantly, never to be heard from again. Do you think the grifty kind of content they generate would go away? What do you think, Todd?
No.
Or do you think you just have to do that with another chloroformed class of grifters weeks, months, minutes later?
For sure.
For sure. So there's only engagement to be gotten if someone's doing the engaging. So the people are always the problem, which often means therefore they are the solution. But we do have a major problem with this for sure. And I think we were just talking before the show as we were discussing, because the three of us have not had a chance to talk and see each other for almost a week, so we're getting caught up on various things. And we probably had more pre-show chatter today than we will have like when we're more together on a regular basis. It's usually like pretty quiet here until I come in, ask Todd, anything breaking, he'll tell me 2 minutes before the show starts, Aaron, just send me the rundown or send me the live reads.
Oh, crap.
Or Aaron will usually say, oh, crap. All right. That's pretty much our pre-show chatter most days, right?
It's like Wile E. Coyote and the Sheepdog. We just punch in and then the show actually starts and we throw anvils at each other.
Yes. Yeah. And so, but today, because we had been gone from one another for almost a week, we had a lot of pre-show chatter. And one of the things that came up in our conversation today was lefty media has been extremely effective at feeding the craven desires of its audience. Identity, moral transformation. Righty media has done a great job of feeding the self-righteousness of its audience. Like we can have these high-minded principles in a vacuum and not have to, actually live in a real world Okay. And I don't want to hear anything other than whoever is my GOP champion of the moment tiptoes between the raindrops and he's going to be undefeated and own the libs again, right? So that's a reflection of our audiences more than anything else. I will just tell you, I try to avoid that kind of content as much as I can. I follow the widest variety of people on X as I can, so I can stay as informed as I can. But in terms of long-form content, I try to avoid all that stuff as much as I can.
All right, next up we go to Kent Miller. Now, as I understand, Todd, you want these next three to be...
You might as well, because we don't have much time, so you should just read all three of them and see how Steve reacts to the whole thing.
Kent Miller says, after listening to the contrast of this show in comparison to the softness of the typical pulpit, I'd like to know if you think the church is somehow wrongfully selecting for fragility in its leadership. If so, what can be done to select for better character traits such as courage and discernment, or if something can be done to ensure more boldness? Grace says, how do you know so much, or how do you know how much emphasis smackdown to put on the church when the people are asking the church to be the way that they are? Cam Doughton says, do you think you get so many theology questions because people don't think their pastors can answer them?
That is quite a grouping of questions.
Yes, it was.
The answer let me take the third one is the easiest one to answer. Yes. Just flat out, yes. On the other two, the first one, I don't think it's fragility. I think it is marketing. All right? I mean...
Church as business?
Yes. Almost no one goes to seminary hoping... Now, think about this. God enters into human history as a man. Preaches almost every day for a little more than 3 years. And he's on foot almost every day for a little more than 3 years. No mass transit. And he performs great acts, heals, miracles. When he's done, and they arrest him, and they put him in a tomb, after executing him, he's down to a little bit, somewhere around 110 or so people. That's his congregation. No one goes to seminary hoping for a congregation of 110 people. And all cultures have some form of built-in bias from the cultural influences that they have to be careful do not impose on the prophetic witness of the church. One of the biases that we have is, sure, you can be successful because you're doing things the right way, but you can also be successful because you're not. You see what I'm saying? So the idea that numbers determine the efficacy of a ministry, that's just not how this works. It's math from another world, but that's often the math that we use in our churches. A lot of it, it's why you don't have an elder board. You've got a board of directors. It's why you don't have creeds. You've got mission statements. That's corporatization. So I don't think it's fragility. I think it is marketing. It's the chasing after of mammon. The second part of what was asked is the church is not to... Rick Warren started Saddleback Church exactly how you described. He took a poll of the people in the Saddleback community and asked them why you don't go to church anymore, and then essentially fashioned a ministry after what people responded. That's humanistic at best, demonic at worst. I mean, we preach Christ and Him crucified. We're not, what's this mean to you? No. I mean, that's when the salt has lost its savor, and it's of no use to anybody except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. It's businesses who decide the customer is always right. So this ties into my first answer. But churches decide whether or not they're going to fulfill the Great Commission. And it starts with the assumption that all people are wrong because all people are sinners. So this is what it means. Faith is like currency in the kingdom of God. The Word of God says it's impossible to please God without faith. Correct. Well, then how do we get faith? It comes by hearing, the hearing of the Word of God. So faith is like the currency of the kingdom of God. As a minister, you're supposed to preach the word that God put into your heart and into writing for you to refer to, and then on faith, trust that the Holy Spirit will respond and bring people forward that have been called to hear this message. For many are called, but few are chosen. That's the way it's supposed to work. That's not the way most of it works. That's why you have a church growth consultant and all the rest of this stuff. That's all marketing. That's Americanization. The church is an ecclesiastical institution, not an American one. It's not confined or unique to any particular era or culture. It's the only transcendent institution God ever gave humankind. And it is supposed to exist outside of space and time. And therefore, being self-aware of that, preach accordingly, in season and out of season. It hasn't done that in this country for too many a season. And it's why we're in the position we're in more than anything else, with no close second. Romans 8:28.